Okay, so they have all the footage, so we're not trying to transfer footage at 5:48. Okay.
Here we go.
Yes, this is here because the cameras were there. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. It's been a pretty interesting day, an historic one, as a matter of fact. A day in which the former special counsel affirmed in public what the Mueller report put forth. It is a crossing of a threshold in terms of the public awareness of what happened and how it conforms to the law or not. The president likes to have his poster that said the Mueller report took this many days, cost this much money, this, that, and the other. Well, we have a corresponding contradictory chart. Mueller investigation by the numbers. $40 million recovered for the U.S. government. Remember, he said how much it would cost? Less than that. 37 people and entities charged with crimes, 25 ongoing criminal cases referred, 7 convicted, including 5 top Trump campaign officials. And then he had no collusion, no this or that. 10 instances of obstruction, yes. No exoneration. That's some of what we heard today. I just want to go to another point. At the same time as we're on this path of the Mueller investigation, to recognize that the Mueller investigation was prohibited from looking into the president's finances. And that is what our committees of jurisdiction have been doing. As we legislate for the good of the American people, we're also investigating so that we have the grist for the mill to litigate in court. And those cases we've won in lower courts. They, of course, appealed. We feel strongly about our position, about the position of Article 1, the legislative branch having the right to have oversight over every other branch of government. But that's important because it means we can get the information to show the American people what the obstruction of justice was further all about. I'm very, very proud of our committees, the Judiciary Committee and its great chairman, Jerry Nadler, the Intelligence Committee, great chairman, Adam Schiff. We're going to hear from them now. And we're also joined by Elijah Cummings, chair of the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, a committee that is winning its courts in case as well. So I'm going to yield with great respect to all 3 of our chairmen, and then we'll take some questions. First, I'll yield to the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, the American people heard directly about what the special counsel investigation uncovered as to Russia's interference in the 2016 election and the president's cooperation with it and obstruction of justice. Mueller made clear that the president is not exonerated. Mueller found evidence of obstruction of justice and abuses of power by the president. He said the report said the president could be indicted for obstruction of justice after he leaves office. Mueller found that Trump would and did benefit from Russia's help, and that the campaign welcomed that help. Mueller found multiple instances where all 3 elements for charging criminal obstruction of justice were met: trying to fire the special counsel in order to stop the investigation, trying to have people lie and cover up for him for the same purpose, trying to limit or impede or constrict the special counsel's investigation, trying to tamper with witnesses, cooperating with investigators. All of these were found with great evidence. President Trump went to great lengths to obstruct the special counsel's investigation. Anyone else who acted in this way, if they were not the sitting president, would face criminal prosecution, would face indictments. Only the Office of Legal Counsel's opinion that you cannot indict a sitting president has saved or is saving the president from indictment, because all the elements of these crimes were found with substantial evidence, and the people have now heard this. The president's chant of no obstruction is nonsense. His chant that he's been totally exonerated is a simple lie.
First of all, I want to thank Director Mueller for a lifetime of service to the country, from his days as a young Marine in Vietnam through his decades of service as a prosecutor, as the director of the FBI, and through his service as special counsel. This nation owes him an enormous debt of gratitude. So, Director Mueller, I want to thank you personally for all of your service. Today, the director outlined in powerful words how Russia intervened massively in our election, systematically in a sweeping fashion, how during the course of that intervention they made multiple approaches to the Trump campaign. And far from shunning that foreign involvement in our election, the Trump campaign welcomed it, made full use of it, put it into its communications and messaging strategy, and then lied about it. Lied about it to cover it up, lied about it to obstruct the investigation into that very attack on our democracy. Part of what I found so powerful about his testimony today was not just when he was asked about the law, but when he was asked about the ethics, the morality, the lack of patriotism of this conduct. And perhaps one of the most chilling moments, I think, in our committee was when he expressed the fear that this become the new normal. And of course, I think what is animating that fear of the director, what certainly animates it for me, is the fact even after the nightmare of the last 2.5 years, the President of the United States will still not forswear receiving foreign help again. That to this point, the President still continues to call this Russian attack on our democracy a hoax, something that Director Mueller today directly refuted. That he still calls a witch hunt, something that the Director Mueller today directly refuted. And so we go into this next election more vulnerable than we should be. We can't control completely what Russia does, although we must do everything we can to harden our election defenses, to make sure there are paper trails, to make sure that we deter and disrupt any kind of Russian intervention. But we cannot control that completely, but we can control what we do. And Director Mueller made it clear in no uncertain terms that it's up to us whether we act ethically and patriotically, whether we refuse to be a party to a foreign attack on our democracy. And once again, I thank him for his service.
Thank you. Elijah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I first want to applaud Chairman Nadler, and who heads our Judiciary Committee, and certainly our chairman of our Intelligence Committee, for what they did today in their committees. What they did was paint a picture for America. One of the most chilling things that I have noticed, that I've witnessed, is when a former member of our committee, Mr. Amash, a Republican, went to a town hall meeting and got a round of applause in a Republican district after he had said that he felt that the president should be impeached. But that wasn't the thing that got me. What really got me was when a lady at the end of the town hall meeting said, "I didn't know that there was anything negative in the Mueller report about President Trump." That says a lot. And to her credit, our speaker made it clear that we needed to paint a picture for America, so that they could fully understand what is going on. This is a critical moment in our country's history. Don't be fooled. And it is a moment which people will be talking about and reading about 300, 400, 500 years from now. And they're going to ask the question, what did you do when we had a president who knew the rules and knew that our founding fathers had done a great job of creating a constitution and had put in all the guardrails, but never anticipate that we would have a president that would just throw away the guardrails. And that's why what happened today is so critical. It was a giant step in making sure that the American people got a picture of all of this, and hopefully will look towards the future and say, we're not going to have this. Both Mr. Nadler and Mr. Schiff said something that's very critical. This isn't normal. And we're now getting so used to normal, to this kind of conduct by our president, and by the way, of our attorney general and our Republican colleagues, that it looks like people are just going to accept it. Well, we refuse to accept it. And then in my committee, we constantly, and I know Schiff and Nadler have heard this, people say, oh, you're just messing with the president because you don't like him. It's not about not liking the president. It's about loving democracy. It's about loving our country. It's about making a difference for generations yet unborn. That's what this is all about. And I'm begging the American people to pay attention to what is going on. Because if you want to have a democracy intact for your children and your children's children and generations yet unborn, we have got to guard this moment. This is our watch. And again, I am so very proud of the Judiciary Committee. I am so very, very proud of the Intelligence Committee, because they went in and tried to pull out the facts so that they could paint the picture so that America could see it. And hopefully they will not be ladies like the lady at Amash's town hall meeting, who says they didn't know that there was something wrong that Trump did with regard in this Mueller report. And so, again, the speaker is absolutely right. She told us a little bit earlier that she wants to gather all the information and make sure that we have everything we need to paint that picture. Now, what the American people do with it, that's another thing. But we will not stand by and fail to let them see the total picture. And I want to thank Mr. Mueller for coming forward for this service to our country. But last but not least, it is so interesting that when Mueller would make a decision that they liked, they said, oh, we love you, you're the greatest thing since ice cream. But then as soon as he says something they don't like, oh, you're a bum. Come on now. We have to see through that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, as we acknowledge the greatness of our chair, Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff, I also want to acknowledge the greatness of Elijah Cummings, the chair of the Government Reform and Oversight Committee. He has really won the first case, the Mazur decision, which his research enabled us to take to court. We won the case. The decision was a complete, beautiful statement on the ability of Congress to have oversight.
That's right.
Just a remarkable decision, and now, of course, the administration is appealing it. But I thank you, too, Mr. Cummings, for your great leadership and where we're going next. Because, as you know, the Mueller investigation could not do the president's personal or business connections, and one of those connections could be to the Russians, and that's what we want to find out. So as we go to questions, I just want to say that I do believe that what we saw today was a very strong manifestation, in fact, some would even say indictment, of this administration's cone of silence in their cover-up. This is about the oath we take to protect and defend the Constitution. But some of the actions that the administration may have taken, and we'll see through our investigation, may have jeopardized our national security by strengthening Russia's hand and interfering in our elections, undermining democracy not only in our country, but in other countries as well, upsetting our preeminence as a democracy in the world. This is very serious. Today was very important. Again, salute our chairman, all of our 6 chairmen who have been involved in this, and now we can take some questions. Okay, so who do you want to hear from first? You guys decide. Wait a minute, how about a new person? And Katie, okay, she's having a baby. We have to go there first. As a mother of 5, I feel.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, what you saw today, did it change whether or not you think the House of Representatives should launch impeachment proceedings?
My position has always been whatever decision we made in that regard would have to be done with our strongest possible hand, and we still have some outstanding matters in the courts. It's about the Congress, the Constitution, and the courts, and we are fighting the president in the courts.
Madam Speaker, to be clear here, isn't the issue, Madam Speaker, to be clear here.
I'm sure you're expecting more of your members.
Excuse me?
Can I just follow up? Some of your members told us over the course of today that they were expecting imminent action of some kind.
No, I don't know why they did.
What are the very
I don't know why they thought that. But they came to me and I said, I don't know why.
The very next step is the lawsuit.
Yeah. Again, the lawsuits, as we have a number of lawsuits. You want to speak to that, Jerry? Please.
Well, the very next step, I'm not going to talk longer range, the very next step, either tomorrow or Friday, is we're going into court to enforce, to ask for the grand jury material and to enforce the subpoena against Mr. McGahn. And that's particularly important because the excuses, and I won't call them reasons, the excuses that the White House gives for McGahn not testifying, the nonsense about absolute immunity, et cetera, are the same excuses for all the other fact witnesses. And if we break that, we'll break the logjam.
Madam Speaker, what about, where do you stand right now? What do you need to know on impeachment to say, okay, we don't know enough yet?
Did I just not say we're waiting to hear from the courts? So we have our subpoenas in the court and the subpoenas are for information. And when we get that information, we can make a judgment.
So that will be the telltale sign about whether or not you.
Yeah, we have several considerations. It's about what information is there, and this isn't endless. This isn't endless.
No.
I understand that, but we have live cases in the courts. We have some that are going forward that Mr. Chairman Nadler just mentioned. It isn't endless, but it would strengthen our hand to get that information. Remembering that in the Watergate was when they got the information in the tapes that broke the case. That wasn't just about changing public opinion. That helped change public opinion. But it's not about me. It's about our caucus. It's about our country. As I say, there's a cone of silence in the White House that is engaged in a massive cover-up in the obstruction of justice. Those obstruction of justice charges, as has been demonstrated today in the hearings, could be indictable offenses by anybody else, not the President of the United States and the President when he's no longer President. But the American people, I think that if we go down that path, we should go in the strongest possible way. And that's all I'm going to say about the subject. We have our distinguished chairs here.
Let me say something. And I know Chairman Schiff and Chairman Nadler would repeat what I'm saying. You know, the American people in the last election, even from Trump districts, said we want to make the president accountable. A lot of people loved him. They like him, but they want to make him accountable. And we have been stonewalled with regard to getting information, access to witnesses, and getting documents. All of us have. Remember, the president said, "I'm not. I'm not going to give you anything really." And so, again, the speaker is absolutely right. We're gathering information, and we are met with significant force, but we're plowing our way through. But all of that information, piece by piece, is like a mosaic, paints the picture.
Speaker Pelosi, but you have long said that there's no point in moving forward with an impeachment inquiry because Republicans control the Senate. It's going to die in the Senate. Is that no longer your
I have never long said that. I have never long said that. If we have a case for impeachment, that's the place we will have to go. The fact that why I'd like it to be a strong case is because it's based on the facts and the law. That's what matters, not politics, not partisanship, just patriotism. I don't care. I'd like the Senate to be responsible and honor their oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution, to see the challenge this is to our national security, that the Russians trying to do to our country. But the stronger our case is, the worse the Senate will look for just letting the president off the hook.
Speaker Pelosi, even after
we have these great chairmen here who know so much. Please, I'm going to start asking them questions if you.
Even after these hearings, the president said he's completely exonerated.
Please, come on. Let me just say this. You give me the opportunity to say this, and then I invite my chairman to close. We want to have the strongest possible case to make a decision as to what path we will go down, and that is not endless in terms of time or endless in terms of the information that we want. But if it comes to a point where the cone of silence and the obstruction of justice and the cover-up in the White House prevents us from getting that information, that will not prevent us from going forward. In fact, it's even more grounds to go forward. My colleagues?
I just want to echo that. Martin Luther King said something that is in the DNA of every cell in my brain, particularly right now. He said, there comes a point when silence becomes betrayal. And we refuse to betray generations that are unborn and the American people. We're not going to betray them. And the more we're accumulating information and doing the best we can. Again, with a force as great, I don't know how many lawyers the president has, but he's got a lot of them. And they go against every single thing we do. And so, again, we're not going to betray America. We're going to do our part to make sure that we have a democracy that's intact.
Jerry?
The United States is a democracy. It must remain a democracy. A democracy acts through the elected officials with the consent of the people. The people cannot give that consent unless they know the facts. Today was a watershed day in telling the facts to the American people. With those facts, we can proceed. And we face a time of great danger. Richard Nixon said he thought that the president was a dictator. He said if the president does it, that means it's not illegal. President Trump echoed that yesterday. He said under Article 2, I, that is he, can do anything I want. That is a totalitarian picture, not a democratic picture. The United States must be saved from this. So we have to paint the picture of what's going on, a picture of someone who gladly accepted help from a foreign power interested in subverting our election, our democratic election process, and that's what it is, subverting our election process and taking the choice of our president to some extent away from the American people. That's what the Russians attempted to do, and that's what the Trump campaign welcomed them in doing. A president who engages in crimes, repeated crimes, to cover up these unpatriotic and dictatorial actions. And this cannot go on, and it's up to Congress to safeguard the Constitution, and we will do it.
As I mentioned today during our hearing, I think the story of the 2016 election is really a story of disloyalty to country, about greed and about lies. And if there's anything that I think symbolizes those three strands of the 2016 election, it was Moscow Trump Tower. It was this massive real estate project that the president was trying to consummate while he was running for president and concealing it from the country. This, I think, demonstrated disloyalty to the country by deceiving the American people about this massive business opportunity he was seeking while he was running for president. It's certainly a vivid example of the greed of people involved with that campaign, and an ample demonstration of all the lies that permeated the campaign and its aftermath. That, to me, is the story of the 2016 election. We need to make sure that is not the story of the 2020 election. And I'll say this on the issue of impeachment, which I view in very much the same way as the Speaker. Maybe I'm just an old prosecutor, but before I brought a case to indictment, I wanted to make sure that I had the strongest evidence possible. I wanted to understand my case. I wanted to be able to make my case. Now, I tried an impeachment case in the Senate about 10 years ago, a corrupt federal judge who was convicted. So I have some understanding of what it takes to get a conviction in the Senate, and I have no illusions about getting a conviction in the Senate. But there are two juries in an impeachment. There is the jury, which is the Senate, which decides removal from office, and then there is the jury that is the American people. And I'm most concerned about the jury that is the American people. And before we embark on a course as significant to the country as the impeachment of a president, I want to make sure that we can make that case to the jury of the American people.
One of the guidance, I thank our distinguished chairman, so proud of all of them, but just following up on the last statement by Chairman Schiff, e pluribus unum. That's the guidance our founders gave us. They couldn't imagine how many we would be or how different we'd be from each other. They want us to remember that we are one. So when we go down this path, we want it to be as unifying for our country, not dividing. And that's why we want it to be the strongest possible case. President Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. Well, in order for the public to have the sentiment, the public has to know. So I hope you will be messengers of the truth to the public. We think today was really a milestone in making that sentiment be more informed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
And Democrats wrapping up there about their response to the Mueller hearings, saying they believe that it proved there was an obstruction